Welcome to Monk's Temple. For the next 3 hours, we're not going on a journey to find anything. We're not searching for a hidden purpose buried by the universe. We're not decoding secret messages from our pain. Instead, we're going to do something far more direct, and frankly, more demanding. We're going to learn to see what's already in your hands. Right now. Look at your hands. Really look at them. These are the most important tools you will ever own. They're not for grasping at predetermined meanings. They're for shaping. For creating. For working with raw material. Most of us spend our lives under a different assumption. We act as if we're archaeologists on a sacred dig, carefully brushing away dust, hoping to uncover the one true artifact, the meaning of my life, that was buried there before we arrived. We think our job is to find it without breaking it. To discover the blueprint, the map, the instruction manual. We suffer, and we ask, what is this pain trying to show me? We lose something, and we plead, why did this happen? What's the reason? We stand at crossroads, paralyzed, whispering, which path is the one I'm meant to take? This quest, this desperate archaeology, is based on a single, powerful idea, that meaning is out there, waiting. That significance is pre-installed. That our lives are like novels where the plot is already written, and we're just turning the pages, trying to figure out the author's intention. What if that's not just incorrect, but the very thing that keeps us stuck? What if the liberation we seek doesn't come from finding the buried artifact, but from realizing there never was one to begin with? And that this realization isn't a curse of emptiness, but the declaration of your ultimate freedom? Today, we're going to explore what it means to put down the archaeologist's brush and pick up the sculptor's tools. We're going to talk about clay. Let me start with a story, set not in an ancient monastery, but in a small, sun-baked village in the south of Italy. Two neighbors, Marco and Luca, each inherit a plot of land from their grandfather. The land is identical, rocky, dry, sloping, with thin, stubborn soil. From an archaeologist's perspective, it's worthless land. Nothing of value is buried here. Marco looks at his plot and feels despair. This is terrible soil, he mutters. Nothing good can grow here. This must be a test. Or a punishment. Nano must have given me the bad plot for a reason. Maybe I need to learn patience. Or humility. He spends his days analyzing the rocks, researching the poor quality of the soil online, and complaining to anyone who will listen about the cosmic unfairness of his inheritance. He waits. He waits for a sign, for a dream, for a feeling that will tell him what he's supposed to do with this terrible gift. He waits for the soil to miraculously improve. He does nothing but wait, believing the meaning of this plot, its reason for being so bad, will eventually reveal itself. Luca stands on his identical plot. He kicks a rock. He picks up a handful of dry earth and lets it sift through his fingers. He thinks, well, this is what I have. He doesn't see a test. He sees material. Hard material, but material nonetheless. He doesn't ask, why is this my plot? He asks, what can I make from this plot? He learns that this terrible soil is perfect for rosemary, for lavender, for certain hardy olives. He learns to use the rocks to build beautiful, terraced retaining walls. He learns to channel the scarce water with clever, ancient irrigation tricks. He works with the slope, not against it. His hands become cracked and stained with earth. He makes mistakes. Plants die. Walls collapse. He starts again. 10 years later. Marco's plot is exactly as it was, barren, rocky, a monument to waiting. Luca's plot is a breathtaking terraced garden. The air smells of rosemary and thyme. Bees hum between lavender stalks. The olive trees, gnarled and strong, bear fruit. It's not the lush, green vineyard of the valley below. It's something else entirely, a stunning creation born from a direct, unflinching engagement with difficult, real material. Same starting clay. Two different relationships to it. One defined by searching for a pre-existing reason in the difficulty. The other defined by creating value from the difficulty itself. This is our starting point. Not karma as cosmic justice. Not the universe as a teacher. But cause and effect as natural law, and our capacity to work within it. To understand this, we need to leave the garden for a moment and go to a river. Imagine a wide, powerful river in the Pacific Northwest. It has flowed for millennia. It has no consciousness. It has no plan for you. It doesn't care if you're a good person or a bad person. It simply follows the path of least resistance, governed by gravity, geology, and the weather. If you step into that river and try to walk directly upstream, fighting the current with all your might, you will exhaust yourself. You may be swept off your feet. You might get hurt on the rocks. The river isn't punishing you. It isn't trying to teach you a lesson about perseverance or humility. It's just being a river. The consequence of fighting a strong current is exhaustion and danger. That's natural law. If, instead, you understand the river, you can work with it. You can move diagonally across the current. You can find eddies and quieter spots to rest. You can use a kayak. You can even, if your goal is to go upstream, portage around the roughest sections. The river hasn't changed. Your relationship to the river's nature has changed. This is a clearer picture of how things work. Our actions, our thoughts, our words, our deeds, are like stepping into this river. Certain actions align with the flow of reality, with truth, with kindness, with seeing things as they are. Those actions tend to create less internal friction, less exhaustion. Other actions are like walking directly upstream against a powerful current, actions rooted in denial, in cruelty, in selfish illusion. They create friction, exhaustion, and pain. Not because a divine river god is judging you, but because that's the natural consequence of that kind of movement. The pain isn't a lesson. It's feedback. The burned hand doesn't teach the child about fire, the nerve endings send a signal about tissue damage. The child can learn from the signal, or they can blame the fire for being mean and touch it again. I want to introduce a story from a friend of mine, a man named James who worked as a welder in Detroit for 40 years. James didn't know anything about karma or Buddhist philosophy. He knew about steel, heat, and precision. He told me about training apprentices. The biggest mistake a young welder makes, he said, in his gravelly voice, is fighting the metal. They have a perfect bead in their mind, a perfect seam. They want the metal to be that way. But the metal has its own nature. It warps with heat. It has impurities. It's not a perfect, abstract idea. It's this specific piece, right here, right now. The kid who fights it, he continued, who gets angry when it warps, who blames the metal or the machine or his own clumsiness, he makes a mess. He forces it, and the weld is weak. It'll crack under pressure. It's ugly. But the kid who learns to listen to the metal, to feel the heat through his glove, to adjust his angle to the warp, to work with the impurity rather than pretending it's not there, that kid makes a strong weld. It might not be the textbook perfect bead he imagined, but it will hold. It has integrity. It's a conversation with reality, not an argument. James was describing, in the language of sparks and molten steel, the essence of skillful engagement. The metal was his clay. His skill wasn't in forcing the clay to obey his will, but in understanding the clay's nature so deeply that he could collaborate with it to create something strong and true. He wasn't waiting for the perfect piece of metal to arrive. He was working with the metal that was on his bench today. Now, this view, the river, the welder, doesn't offer the comfort that many spiritual clichés do. It strips away what I call the cosmic insurance policy. The cosmic insurance policy is the belief that if you pay your premiums, through faith, through positive thinking, through enduring suffering patiently, the universe guarantees a payout. Everything happens for a reason, and that reason is ultimately for your benefit. A hidden safety net. A divine plan where all twists are plot twists leading to a happy ending. We see this everywhere. In the well-meaning friend who says, "This breakup is a blessing in disguise." The universe is making space for your soulmate. In the Instagram post that says, "Trust the process." The universe has your back. In the internal narrative after a failure. This must be happening to steer me toward my real destiny. It's seductive. It turns chaos into cryptic order. It makes randomness feel like personalized design. It wraps the unbearable uncertainty of life in a blanket of cosmic purpose. But here is the crucial, liberating, and initially uncomfortable truth: there is no claims department for that policy. When you file a claim after a tragedy, after a betrayal, after years of struggle that lead nowhere obvious, you get a recording. Your call is very important to us. Please continue to hold. The lesson will be revealed in due time. You can hold forever. Believing in this insurance policy makes you passive. You become a policyholder waiting for the check to arrive, rather than a craftsman working with the materials at hand. You endure the toxic job because, "I must need to learn a lesson here." You stay in the painful relationship because, "Maybe this is my karma to resolve." You interpret suffering as proof that a beneficial lesson is being administered, rather than as a signal about your current engagement with reality. You stop asking, "What can I do?" and start asking, "What is this doing to me, and why?" Let's travel to the coast of Kerala, India. Meet Lakshmi, a fisherwoman. Her life is the Arabian Sea. She doesn't believe the sea is for her, or against her. The sea is the sea. Some days it is calm and glassy, yielding a bountiful catch with ease. Those are good days. Some days it is furious, storms raging, and she must stay on shore, mending nets, watching her income for the week vanish. Those are hard days. One year, a particularly fierce monsoon season destroys not only her boat but the boats of everyone in her village. A Western aid worker comes, full of sympathy. He says to Lakshmi, "I'm so sorry for this tragedy. But remember, everything happens for a reason. Maybe this is to make your community stronger. Maybe better boats are coming." Lakshmi listens patiently, then shakes her head. She points to the sea. "The sea has no reason," she says. "It has tides, and winds, and seasons. The storm happened because a low-pressure system met warm water. That is all. Now, we have no boats. That is what is true. We can sit and wait for a reason to appear, or we can start gathering wood." Her community didn't wait for meaning to arrive with the tide. They didn't search for the hidden benevolence in the storm. They assessed the raw material of their situation: broken wood, skilled hands, collective will. They built new boats, differently designed, stronger against the wind. The tragedy wasn't a lesson. It was an event. Their response, active, communal, clear-eyed, was what created the meaning, resilience, innovation, solidarity. The raw material after the storm was devastation. What they made from it was a renewed community. They were sculptors, not archaeologists. So, if we are the sculptors and our life circumstances are the clay, what are our tools? The primary tool, the one that determines everything else, is your perception. Your perception is your chisel. A chisel in the hands of a novice can ruin a block of marble. The same chisel in the hands of a master can reveal a form of breathtaking beauty. The marble is the same. The tool is the same. The skill and intention of the wielder make the difference. Let's bring this into a daily, modern context. You're in a business meeting. Your colleague, Anna, challenges your proposal. She points out 3 potential flaws. Perception chisel number 1, the blunt instrument. You perceive Anna as a rival, threatened by your success, trying to undermine you in front of the boss. Your chisel of perception hits the clay of this interaction, and what do you sculpt? Defensiveness. Resentment. A closed mind. You dismiss her points. You make a mental note to discredit her later. The meeting ends with tension, and a potentially good idea remains unimproved. Perception chisel number 2, the refined tool. You perceive Anna as intelligent, thorough, and committed to the project's success, even if her delivery is direct. Same clay, her critical feedback. Your chisel now shapes something else. Curiosity. Engagement. You consider her points. You ask clarifying questions. Together, you refine the proposal into something more robust. The meeting ends with progress and mutual respect. Anna didn't change. Her words didn't change. Your perception of her intention changed. And that single shift transformed the entire interaction from a conflict into a collaboration. You received either harm or help from the same person, based not on her, but on the tool you chose to use. This is what the Tibetan masters point to with, "See all beings as Buddhas." It's not a naive command to ignore harmful behavior. It's a radical training of perception. It's choosing the refined chisel. When you perceive someone's fundamental capacity for wisdom, even when that capacity is currently buried under confusion or fear, you create a space in yourself that allows for their best to possibly emerge. You invite collaboration instead of conflict. You sculpt connection from the clay of human interaction. You are not controlling them. You are controlling the only thing you ever truly can: your own stance, your own lens, your own point of engagement. This shifts the entire dynamic from the inside out. Think of a jazz pianist in a Harlem club in the 1950s. The band is tight. Then, a young saxophonist gets up for a solo. He's nervous. He hits a clunker, a note that's wildly off-key, a rhythmic stumble. The clay of the moment is now awkward, fractured. The pianist with a blunt perception chisel hears a mistake that ruins the groove. He gets annoyed, his playing becomes stiff, correcting, trying to over-control the music to herd the saxophonist back in line. The music loses its soul. It becomes a tense exercise. The pianist with a refined chisel hears something else. He hears not just a wrong note, but an attempt, an energy, a human moment in the music. He doesn't hear a mistake to be condemned, he hears an event to be incorporated. So he listens, adapts. He might echo the discordant note, transform it into a motif, bend the chord underneath it to make it sound intentional, like a cry within the melody. He doesn't fight the clay, he works with it. And in doing so, he does two things. He saves the solo, giving the saxophonist the confidence to find his groove, and he often creates a moment of musical magic that would never have been planned. The flaw becomes the most memorable part of the night. Your life is that jazz solo. Clunkers will happen. Your perception, your internal pianist, determines whether you freeze up in judgment or lean in and make art with what just happened. The note itself is neutral clay. Your relationship to it determines the song. This brings us to a critical juncture. If our perception is the chisel, then what is the clay actually made of? We've called it circumstances, events, raw material. But to work with it skillfully, we need to understand its fundamental property, its neutrality. The clay does not come with a label that says, "Sculpt a tragedy here," or "This lump is meant to be a victory." Its meaning is not embedded. Let me share a story from my own life, long before I understood any of this. I was in my early 20s, traveling through Southeast Asia with a backpack and very little money. In a busy market in Chiang Mai, my bag was stolen. It had my passport, my camera with months of photos, my journal, and most of my cash. In that moment, the clay of that event felt exclusively like catastrophe. It felt like a dark, heavy, hopeless lump. The archaeologist in me immediately started digging. Why did this happen? What did I do to deserve this? Is the universe trying to teach me a lesson about attachment? Is this karma for something? I was lost in the search for a pre-existing meaning. I spent days in a cycle of anger, shame, and passive waiting for the police to miraculously recover it, waiting for the feeling of cosmic injustice to subside, waiting for the reason to become clear so I could finally move on. It was a miserable, stagnant time. What changed it was a simple, pragmatic shift forced by necessity. I ran out of money to stay in my guest house. I had to engage. I went to my embassy for an emergency passport. I found a small, family-run hostel where I could work for a few hours a day cleaning in exchange for a bed. I had to talk to people, ask for help, be vulnerable. The catastrophe, clay, through the act of engaging with it, began to reshape. I wasn't looking for a lesson, I was solving a problem. And in solving it, I discovered a resilience I didn't know I had. I made deeper connections with local people than I ever had as a tourist. I learned to live with far less, and found a surprising freedom in it. The loss of the photos forced me to be more present, to really see rather than view everything through a lens. The clay of the theft didn't contain those lessons. I created those insights by how I eventually chose to meet the practical reality of the situation. The event was neutral. My prolonged passive suffering came from my relationship to it, my insistence that it meant something terrible about me or my journey. My eventual resilience came from a different relationship, one of pragmatic, step-by-step engagement with what is. The theft wasn't good. But my response to it became the material for a kind of growth that comfortable travel never provided. This principle is mirrored in the natural world, in a process scientists call post-traumatic growth. Research in psychology has shown that while trauma itself is damaging and never good, a significant number of people, when they emerge from the crucible of suffering, report positive changes. They speak of increased personal strength, a greater appreciation for life, deeper relationships, new possibilities, and spiritual development. The crucial finding is this growth is not automatic. It is not caused by the trauma itself. The trauma is the event, the clay. The growth is caused by the individual's struggle with the new reality in the aftermath, their cognitive and emotional processing, their search for meaning, their gradual reconstruction of their worldview. In other words, the growth is not found in the trauma, it is constructed by the person in response to the trauma. The suffering is the fire. Whether you are hardened like brick or tempered like steel depends not on the fire alone, but on the quality of the material and the process of working with it during and after the heating. The fire is neutral. It simply reveals and transforms based on what's placed within it. Consider two people who survive a serious car accident. Both experience the same objective trauma. One person spends years consumed by fear and anger. They see every driver as a threat, every journey as a potential death trap. They sue, they blame, they replay the moment of impact endlessly. Their world contracts to the size of their anxiety. The accident clay, met with this perception and response, hardens into a prison of fear. The other person, after the same physical recovery, comes to a stark realization: I am alive by a thread of chance. This life is not guaranteed. This realization, while terrifying, becomes a different kind of clay. They don't see other drivers as enemies, they see them as equally fragile. They feel a heightened sense of the preciousness of ordinary moments. A morning coffee, a conversation, the sky. They may become an advocate for road safety, transforming their fear into protective action for others. The accident clay, met with this perception and response, is shaped into a profound, if painful, awakening to life's fragility and value. Same event. Vastly different creations. The difference lies entirely in the space between the event and the response, the space where perception does its work, where the chisel meets the clay. Here is where theory meets the grindstone of daily life. People often imagine growth, change, or creation happening in moments of perfect alignment. The stars are right. Motivation is high. All obstacles are cleared. The muse is visiting. Let's call that day 365. The person who believes in perfect conditions lives for day 365. They wait for it. They prepare for it. They check their astrological chart, their energy levels, the support of their friends, the state of their inbox. They need to feel inspired, rested, and completely confident. If it's not day 365, they're not working the clay. They're preparing to work the clay when conditions are right. But the sculptor, the true creator of their life, understands what I call the 364-day principle. Real progress, enduring transformation, and genuine mastery are not forged on the one perfect day. They are built on the 364 imperfect ones. This is the workshop where your life is actually made. Not in the dramatic, spotlight moments, but in the quiet, consistent, often tedious engagement with ordinary material. Let's make this concrete. Imagine someone who wants to write a book. The person waiting for day 365 has a beautiful notebook, a perfect writing app, a dedicated office. They wait for a full, uninterrupted 4-hour block where they feel wildly creative and inspired. That day comes maybe once every few months. They write 10 pages in a glorious rush. Then, life returns, work is busy, they're tired in the evenings, the kids need attention, they don't feel it. They wait for the next perfect day. A year passes, and they have 40 pages, written in isolated bursts, with no connective thread or momentum. They feel like a failure, blaming their busy life for not being the perfect writing life. Now, the sculptor writer. They understand the 364-day principle. They don't have a perfect office, they have a kitchen table at 6 in the morning before anyone else is up. They don't wait for inspiration, they commit to 300 words a day, no matter what. On day 12, they're tired and write 300 terrible words. On day 57, they're distracted but get the 300 words done on their phone during a commute. On day 129, they're in flow and write 1,000, but they still show up on day 130, when they're not, to do their 300. They are working with the clay of that specific day, the clay of fatigue, of distraction, of limited time, of fluctuating motivation. At the end of a year, they have a completed first draft. Not a perfect one, but a real, tangible body of work created from the accumulation of ordinary days. The masterpiece wasn't written on the inspired days, it was built on the uninspired ones. This principle applies to everything. To meditation. You don't build a calm mind on the one day you feel perfectly serene. You build it on the 364 days you sit down when your mind is busy, anxious, or bored, and you simply observe the chaos without buying into it. To physical health. You don't get fit during the 1 week a year you go on a health retreat. You build health on the 364 days you choose the slightly healthier meal, take the stairs, go for the walk even when it's raining, do the 5-minute stretch before bed. To relationships. You don't build deep connection during the one perfect vacation. You build it on the 364 days you choose to listen actively after a long workday, to offer a kind word in a moment of stress, to do a small chore without being asked. The person waiting for day 365 looks at your 364 days of small, imperfect effort and sees nothing grand. No dramatic breakthroughs. No perfect conditions. They don't see the sculpture emerging because they're looking for a single, dramatic event of creation, the one perfect strike of the chisel. But you, with clay-stained hands, know the truth. The form is revealed chip by chip, day by day. The character is built in the repetition of small choices. The life is assembled from 364 fragments of showing up, precisely when it wasn't easy or ideal. Now, let me introduce another completely original story. This one comes from the world of science, from a researcher I met who studied forest ecology in the Pacific Northwest. She explained to me the concept of disturbance ecology. A mature forest seems stable, but its health and diversity often depend on periodic disturbances, a wildfire, a windstorm that topples a large tree, a flood. These events are not good or bad in a simple sense. They are neutral forces. They create clearings in the canopy. And in those clearings, sunlight, which hasn't reached the forest floor in decades, suddenly pours in. This sunlight is the catalyst for new growth. Seeds that have lain dormant in the soil for years, waiting for this exact condition, suddenly germinate. Pioneer species shoot up, creating new habitats. The biodiversity of the forest actually increases because of the disturbance. The storm wasn't meant to create biodiversity. It was a meteorological event. But the forest ecosystem is structured to use that event, to incorporate it, to transform the raw material of destruction into the raw material for new life. Your life has its own disturbance ecology. The job loss, the ended relationship, the illness, the failure, these are your clearings. They are intensely painful, yes. They topple the trees you were relying on for shade. But they also let in a different kind of light, a harsh, revealing light you may have been avoiding. And in that light, seeds of possibility that were dormant within you can germinate. Possibilities for a different career path, for a new understanding of yourself in relationships, for a deeper appreciation of your body, for a resilience you never needed before. The disturbance isn't the lesson. The disturbance is the event that changes the conditions. What grows in the clearing is up to the seeds you've carried within you all along, and whether you recognize the new light as material to work with, or only as evidence of devastation. Consider Maya, a software developer in Berlin. She's been coding a new feature for weeks. The night before a big demo, she finds a catastrophic bug. A deep, system-breaking flaw. The old narrative screams, "This is a disaster. Why is this happening to me? Now of all times. Is the universe testing me?" That's the archaeology mindset, digging for the reason in the bug. Maya, however, has been practicing. She takes a breath. She sees the bug not as a metaphysical punishment, but as information. It's clay. Very frustrating, inconvenient clay, but clay nonetheless. The question shifts from, "Why is this here?" to, "What does this reveal, and what can I do with it?" She discovers the bug exposes a fundamental flaw in her initial architecture, a flaw that would have caused bigger problems months later. Fixing it now, though painful, makes the entire system more resilient and elegant. The all-night fix is brutal, but she approaches it as a problem-solving session with reality, not a personal curse. She also learns new, advanced debugging techniques under pressure. She forges a deeper, almost intuitive understanding of her own code. The demo is a day late, but it's rock solid. Her manager is impressed not just by the feature, but by her comprehensive understanding of its underlying structure. The bug wasn't a reason or a lesson. It was an event, a disturbance. Her response, skillful, engaged, clear-eyed, extracted immense value from it, a superior product, a new skill set, and professional respect. She commanded her state, exhausted, stressed, and worked with it. The clearing the bug created in her timeline let in the light of deeper understanding. This is the pivot from a mindset of fragility to one of anti-fragility. A concept popularized by Nassim Taleb, anti-fragility describes things that gain from disorder, shock, and volatility. A porcelain cup is fragile, it breaks under stress. A plastic cup is robust, it withstands stress and remains the same. But something anti-fragile, like your immune system or a muscle, actually gets stronger when stressed appropriately. It requires the disturbance to grow. The goal is not to avoid all clay that looks difficult or lumpy. The goal is to develop the inner skills so that you can incorporate that clay, work with it, and through that process, become more capable, more adaptable, more insightful. You become anti-fragile. The clay of difficulty, when met with the right tools and mindset, becomes the very material of your strengthening. But remember, the strengthening is in the response, not in the difficulty itself. Lifting weights makes you stronger, but only if you lift them with proper form and intention. Simply having the weights fall on you will just cause injury. The weights are neutral. You're engaged, correct practice with them creates the strength. This brings us to the core declaration. The heartbeat of agency. It sounds bold, maybe even arrogant to the ear conditioned to passivity. But it is the essential mantra of the sculptor. Say it with me, internally, and feel its architecture. My life, I command. My state, I command. Let's unpack this carefully, because misunderstanding it leads to frustration. This does not mean, I command the weather. I command the stock market. I command other people's actions or feelings. I command that I never feel pain, grief, anger, or fear. I command that only pleasant clay is delivered to my workshop. That would be delusion, a toddler's fantasy of omnipotence. That is not command, that is a wish for control over the uncontrollable. What it does mean is this. I command my attention. In this vast field of experience, where will I place my focus? On the one critical comment or the 10 words of praise? On the traffic jam or the podcast I'm listening to within it? On the memory of a past failure or the possibility of the next step? Your attention is the spotlight of your consciousness. You command where it shines. I command my response. Between the external event and your internal reaction, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom and your power. You cannot command the insult hurled your way, but you command whether you respond with a counter-insult, with silence, with a question, or with walking away. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote of this space from the depths of Auschwitz. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. You command that choice. I command my narrative. What story will I tell about this event? Will the story be, this proves I'm a failure, or, this shows me what doesn't work? Will it be, they did this to hurt me, or, they are acting from their own pain? The facts are clay. The narrative you weave around them is your sculpture. You command the weaving. I command my effort. Will I engage or withdraw? Will I pick up the chisel today, even if my hand is shaky, or will I place it back on the bench and wait for a steadier day? Your effort is your commitment to the process, separate from the outcome. You command that commitment. It is the declaration of the sculptor to the clay, I will work with you. I will not just wait for you to rearrange yourself into something easier. I will not simply complain about your texture. I will feel you, understand you, and with my tools, I will participate in what you become. This declaration transfers the locus of control from the outside, the fickle universe, the mysterious plans of karma, the moods of others, to the only place it has ever truly resided, within your own capacity to engage. A personal anecdote from my early teaching years illustrates this shift. I was leading a week-long silent retreat in the Colorado Rockies. We had a beautiful schedule. Meditation at dawn, teachings in a sunlit hall, walking meditation by a stream. On the third day, historic spring storm rolled in. It wasn't just rain, it was a blizzard. Heavy, wet snow knocked out the power lines. The access road washed out. We were isolated, in the dark and cold, with limited supplies. The perfect conditions for a serene, introspective retreat vanished. Fear rippled through the group. Discomfort. Anxiety about food, heat, safety. The old narrative, the archaeologist's instinct, arose in me too. Why is this happening? This is ruining the retreat. What terrible luck. I could have waited, for the road crew, for the power company, for the storm to pass, for the real retreat to somehow resume. That would have been a command of nothing. It would have been surrender to circumstance. Instead, after a period of practical assessment, ensuring everyone was safe and as warm as possible, we made a declaration. We commanded our state. We gathered everyone in the largest room, wrapped in blankets, and lit every candle we could find. We acknowledged the fear and discomfort openly, without drama. Then we reframed. The storm is not an interruption, I said. The storm is now the retreat. The cold is our teacher. The dark is our meditation hall. The uncertainty is our practice ground. We used the howling wind as the object of our meditation. Listening to it not as an annoyance, but as the profound sound of impermanence and power. We shared stories in the flickering candlelight, voices connecting in the dark in a way they hadn't in the bright, formal hall. The shared adversity forged a palpable sense of community and mutual care that a perfectly smooth schedule never could have. We worked with the clay of the storm. What we created from it wasn't the peaceful retreat we'd planned. It was a deeper, more rugged, more memorable experience of resilience and presence. The storm wasn't good. But our collective, commanded response made it valuable. We were sculptors of that week, not victims of the weather. This principle operates on a microscale every single day. You wake up feeling tired and unmotivated, a gray fog in the mind. The old pattern is to wait until you feel more energized before you do anything meaningful. You hit snooze. You scroll mindlessly. You declare the day a write-off before it begins, waiting for a better mood to arrive like better weather. The new pattern, the command, sounds like this: my state, I command. I am tired. That is the clay of this morning. What is the smallest, most gentle version of progress I can make with this specific material? Maybe that's washing your face with cold water instead of a full shower. Maybe it's writing one to-do item instead of the full list. Maybe it's stepping outside for 60 seconds to feel the air. You are not waiting for ideal energy. You are commanding your engagement with actual energy. You are working the clay you have, not the clay you wish you had. Someone criticizes you unfairly at work. The old pattern is to be hijacked by reactive emotion, to fume, to gossip, to plot revenge, or to collapse into shame. You wait until the heat of the feeling subsides before you can think clearly, often leaving a trail of damage in the meantime. The commanded response is to recognize the space. To feel the sting, you cannot command that away, but to place your attention on your breath for 3 cycles. To command your narrative, this says more about their state than my worth. To command your effort, I will respond later, if at all, from a place of clarity, not heat. You are sculpting your dignity from the clay of insult. Your meticulously planned day disintegrates. A sick child, a flat tire, a last-minute deadline. The old pattern is frustration, a sense of personal failure, mentally discarding the day as lost. The commanded response is the pragmatism of the sculptor. The plan is gone. This is the new block of marble in front of me. What, within this new shape, can I create? Perhaps it's a single important phone call made from the waiting room. Perhaps it's practicing patience with the tow truck driver. Perhaps it's simply being fully present for the sick child, turning canceled plans into an unexpected opportunity for connection. You command your attention, shifting it from the ruined plan to the emergent reality. This is what it means to have internal resourcefulness rather than external dependence. External dependence says, I can only be peaceful if my environment is quiet. I can only be kind if others are kind to me first. I can only create if I feel inspired. I can only move forward if the astrology is favorable. Internal resourcefulness says, I can find a thread of peace within the noise by commanding my attention. I can offer kindness regardless of what comes my way by commanding my effort. I can create from discipline when inspiration is absent by commanding my action. I can take a small step in any conditions by commanding my state. The externally dependent person is a weather vane, spun by every change in the wind. The internally resourceful person is the sculptor, who feels the wind, acknowledges it, and continues to work, adjusting their stance but not abandoning their tools. Let's explore this through another original story, this one set in a context of immense external constraint, a long-term prison. I once corresponded with a man, let's call him David, who was serving a lengthy sentence. His external circumstances were the very definition of commanded against his will. His freedom, his schedule, his environment, his social options, all were dictated by an institution. The clay of his life seemed irredeemably hard, dark, and limited. He wrote that for the first few years, he lived in rage and despair, waiting for his appeal, waiting for a miracle, waiting for the reason for this nightmare to be revealed. He was an archaeologist in a cell, digging for a meaning that only deepened his misery. Then, he encountered the teachings of the Stoics, particularly Epictetus, who was himself a slave. He read, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This was the spark of the command. David realized that while the prison commanded his body, it did not have to command his mind, his attention, or his character. He began a deliberate practice. He commanded his attention, he started reading philosophy, history, and literature from the prison library, building a rich inner world. He commanded his effort. He began doing calisthenics in his cell every day, not to become strong for a fight, but to practice discipline and care for the only thing truly his physical vessel. He commanded his narrative. He stopped seeing himself exclusively as a victim of the system and began to see himself as a student in the hardest school on earth, responsible for his own education. He even commanded his response to others. He practiced speaking calmly with guards and inmates, not from weakness, but from a chosen dignity. When he was finally released after many years, he was not the broken, bitter man who had entered. He had used the constrained, difficult clay of prison to sculpt a formidable inner strength, a deep education, and a profound appreciation for simple freedom. He did not thank the prison. He thanked his own commanded response to it. The prison was the event. The man he became was his creation. We arrive now at one of the most practical applications of the sculptor's mindset, the art of extraction. If the clay is neutral and our perception is the chisel, then extraction is the process of pulling value from the raw material, regardless of its initial appearance. This is the alchemy of daily life. It moves us beyond the passive question of, "What does this mean?" to the active, creative question, "What can I mine from this? What can I learn, develop, or practice here?" This is not spiritual bypassing. It's not pretending a painful thing is joyful. It is the clear-eyed recognition that while you may not control the event, you have sovereignty over what you take from it. You are the miner in the quarry of your own experience. Let's be specific with a contrast. Two people face the same difficult circumstance, a profound professional betrayal. A trusted colleague and friend takes credit for their multi-year project, leading to a promotion for the colleague and a dead end for them. Same facts. Same office politics. Same tangible loss of credit and opportunity. Person A extracts bitterness. Their perception chisel is set to enemy. They fixate on the betrayal. They replay every conversation, looking for clues of deceit they missed. They build an airtight legal and emotional case against the betrayer. They gossip to mutual contacts to smear their reputation. They become hypervigilant in all future collaborations, trusting no one. They see the world as a jungle where you must get others before they get you. The betrayal clay, worked with this chisel, hardens into a permanent fortress around their heart. Their career may continue, but it is fueled by resentment and isolation. They become more rigid, more cynical, and less capable of the kind of open collaboration that leads to genuine innovation. They have extracted a prison. Person B extracts wisdom. They feel the full, devastating sting of the betrayal. They allow themselves grief and anger without letting those emotions become their identity. Their perception chisel asks, what does this reveal? It reveals a flaw in the project's documentation and communication chain. It reveals their own naivete about formal credit in a competitive environment. It reveals the colleague's deep insecurity and ambition, which inspires not just anger, but a strange pity. They extract the lesson of discernment, the difference between blind trust and earned trust, between shared excitement and formal agreement. They extract the skill of clear documentation and visible process. They extract the strength to advocate for themselves calmly and professionally in the future, not from a place of victimhood, but from a place of clarity. They may even extract a degree of compassion for the desperate need that would drive someone to such an act. The betrayal clay, worked with this chisel, is shaped into a set of sophisticated professional and personal tools. They become more savvy, more resilient, and more authentically powerful. They have extracted a toolkit. The event was identical. The loss was real for both. The difference in the resulting life is astronomical, and it was determined entirely in the workshop of their response, in what they chose to extract from the raw ore of the experience. This is why the comforting myth that pain purifies is so dangerous. It suggests the purification is automatic, chemical, like fire burning away dross from gold. It isn't. Pain is just the intense heat. Whether you are hardened like clay into a brittle brick or tempered like steel into a resilient blade depends on what you do in the heat. Do you contract, resist, and curse the fire? Or do you allow yourself to be reshaped, to let the heat reveal weaknesses in your structure so you can reform more strongly? The fire doesn't do the work. The smith does. Let's apply extraction to common life quarries. The quarry of financial loss or constraint. Evaluated only economically, this is lack, stress, limitation. The extractive questions: what can I learn about what I truly need versus what I'm conditioned to want? Can I extract creativity, learning to cook, repair, or create rather than consume? Can I develop resourcefulness, finding new income streams or community sharing? Can I practice contentment with simplicity, discovering joy that isn't tied to purchase? Can I learn the humility and grace of accepting help, thereby deepening a relationship? The lack is real. But within that lack are veins of potential strength waiting to be mined. The quarry of social rejection or loneliness. Evaluated only socially, this is pain, exclusion, the ache of not belonging. The extractive questions: can I extract the strength of self-validation, learning to be my own source of approval? Can I gain clarity on the difference between loneliness, a temporary state, and solitude, a chosen practice of self-company? Can I develop a deeper compassion for others who are marginalized? Can I discover my own interests and passions without the filter of a group's opinion? Can I practice reaching out from a place of wholeness rather than neediness, thus attracting healthier connections? The sting is real. But within that sting is the potential to forge a more authentic, independent self. The quarry of failure or wasted time. Evaluated only by the metric of success, this is proof of inadequacy, a setback. The extractive questions: what specific, tactical knowledge did I gain about what doesn't work? Can I extract humility, which is the foundation of all real learning? Can I develop resilience, the simple ability to get up again? Can I mine the experience for self-awareness, understanding my own blind spots or unskillful patterns? Can I practice detachment from outcome, learning to value the integrity of the effort itself? The failure is real. But within that failure is the raw data for your next, wiser attempt. The key is to separate the event from the extraction. Grieve the event. Be angry about the event. Feel the loss of the event. Do not spiritually bypass the reality of the clay hardness. But then, when the initial wave passes, pick up your chisel of perception and ask the miner's question. Given that this rock is here, what valuable or might it contain? This shifts you from a passive recipient of circumstance to an active participant in your own development. I recall a student from years ago, a woman named Elena who was a dedicated cellist. She had trained since childhood for a solo career. In her mid-20s, she developed a chronic nerve condition in her left hand. It wasn't painful, but it caused a slight, consistent tremor. Not enough to stop playing altogether, but enough to shatter her dreams of the precision-obsessed world of classical solo performance. The event was a devastation. The clay was grief, loss of identity, and a terrifying blank future. For a year, she was an archaeologist, digging for the reason. Was she being punished for pride? Was this a test of dedication? She became depressed, unable to touch her cello. Then, slowly, she shifted. She began to ask extractive questions. What can music be without perfect technical control? She started playing again, not for audiences or judges, but for herself, exploring expression over precision. She discovered a love for teaching, for conveying the feeling of music to children who cared nothing about tremors. She began composing simple, evocative pieces that incorporated the emotional quality her slight tremor inadvertently gave to long, sustained notes, a vulnerable, human sound perfect for film scores. She mined the quarry of her limitation and extracted a completely new musical life, as a teacher, a composer for media, and a performer in intimate, experimental settings where feeling mattered more than flawlessness. She told me, losing the perfect hand closed the door to the concert hall, but it opened the window to my whole heart as a musician. I had to break to become whole in a different way. She didn't thank the nerve condition. She thanked her own capacity to extract a new art from its constraints. This process is supported by modern neuroscience through the concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience and focused attention. When you consistently practice extracting patience from frustration, your brain strengthens the neural pathways associated with emotional regulation. When you practice extracting curiosity from criticism, you strengthen pathways for cognitive flexibility. When you practice extracting a next step from failure, you strengthen pathways for resilience and problem solving. You are literally, physically sculpting your own brain through the choices of what you extract from your experiences. The clay of difficulty provides the intense, focused repetition needed for this neural remodeling. But again, the remodeling only happens if you engage in the specific, repeated practice of the skillful response. The difficulty provides the heat. Your repeated, chosen response is the hammer that shapes the metal of your mind. This is the ultimate empowerment hidden within the hardest moments. The universe isn't handing you a lesson plan. It's handing you a rugged landscape. You are the geologist of your own soul. Your task is not to complain about the rocks, but to learn to identify the veins of gold, iron, and crystal that run through them, and to develop the skill to bring them to the surface. We now confront one of the most pervasive and paralyzing illusions, the perfect starting point. It's the siren song that keeps the ship in harbor. It whispers that you must wait for the stars to align, for your confidence to peak, for all external obstacles to clear, for the fear to subside, for the perfect block of marble to be delivered to your studio. This is the tyranny of day 365 thinking applied to beginnings. It is the belief that you need perfect clay to start sculpting. But here's the sculptor's secret, learned in dust and chips: you don't find your form by waiting for perfect material. You discover the form within the material by starting to work with what you have. Let's dismantle this with a principle from the world of product design and entrepreneurship, the minimum viable product or MVP. The idea is not to wait years to launch a perfect, feature-complete product. The idea is to identify the smallest, simplest version of your product that can provide value, and launch that. You put it into the real world, you get feedback from real users interacting with real clay, and you learn, adapt, and improve based on that feedback. Waiting to build the perfect product in a vacuum almost always leads to building something no one wants. The perfect product is not discovered in planning, it is iterated into existence through engagement. Your life is your minimum viable product. Every day, you are not waiting to launch the perfect version of yourself, the perfectly confident you, the perfectly healed you, the perfectly enlightened you. That version is a phantom, an ever-receding horizon. You launch the current version. The you that is somewhat afraid but willing. The you that is grieving but can take one small action. The you that is confused but can ask one honest question. This version, with all its flaws and limitations, is the only real clay you have to work with. And it is more than enough to begin. This requires a specific kind of courage, the courage of the next step. Not the courage to see the entire staircase, as Martin Luther King Jr. noted, but the courage to take the first step. And then the next. And then the one after that. The map is not given, it is drawn with each footfall. Consider another original story, this one set in the vast, arid landscape of the Australian outback. An amateur naturalist named Tom became obsessed with a particular species of desert grass, a tenacious, sharp-bladed plant that seemed to thrive where nothing else could. Scientists knew it was drought-resistant, but Tom noticed something odd. In years of exceptional drought, when other hardy plants browned and died, this grass didn't just survive, it often spread. He spent years observing, taking notes, fighting the heat and flies. The scientific establishment dismissed him as a hobbyist without a proper lab. He didn't have perfect conditions for research. He had a notebook, a jeep, and relentless curiosity. His clay was harsh, isolated, and full of professional discouragement. He kept taking the next step, another observation, another photograph, another soil sample sent to a friendly chemist. Finally, he discovered the grass's secret. Its roots didn't just seek water, they excreted a mild acid that slowly broke down the hardpan rock beneath the sand, releasing trace minerals and creating tiny fissures where microscopic amounts of nocturnal moisture could collect. The grass wasn't just enduring the desert, it was painstakingly, slowly, engineering a tiny, more hospitable environment for itself. It worked with the brutal clay it was given, one molecular change at a time. Tom's discovery, born from imperfect conditions and relentless next steps, revolutionized understandings of desert ecology. He didn't wait for a research grant or a university post. He started with the grass in front of him. Your internal landscape can be just as arid. The project you can't start. The conversation you can't have. The habit you can't break. The dream that feels too distant. The perfect moment to address it never arrives because it doesn't exist. The only moment that exists is now, and it is imperfect. The courage of the next step means treating this imperfect now as your only true starting point. What is the absolute smallest, least threatening version of the thing you need to do? Not write the book, but write one sentence about the main character. Not have the difficult conversation, but write down the one thing I most need to say. Not get in shape, but put on my walking shoes. Not meditate for an hour, but sit down and take one conscious breath. This is how you bypass the tyranny of the perfect start. You make the step so small that the resistance has nothing to push against. You are not sculpting the masterpiece yet, you are simply picking up the chisel and touching it to the stone. The contact itself is the victory. This directly combats what psychologists call behavioral activation, a treatment for depression that is stunningly effective. The theory is simple: when you're depressed, you wait to feel motivated before you act. But motivation follows action, not the other way around. The treatment is to schedule and execute small, manageable, value-driven actions regardless of how you feel. You don't wait to feel like socializing, you commit to a 5-minute coffee with a friend. You don't wait to feel energetic, you commit to walking around the block. By taking these small, commanded steps, you create small wins. These wins generate a trickle of motivation and positive emotion, which fuels slightly larger steps. You are not waiting for the emotional weather to change, you are acting in the rain, and through action, you gradually change your internal climate. You are sculpting your state through movement. This principle explodes the myth of inspiration. The amateur writer waits for inspiration to strike, staring at a blank page in despair on the uninspired days. The professional writer commands their state and writes their 500 words whether they feel inspired or not. They understand that inspiration is not the cause of action, it is more often the byproduct of being deeply engaged in the work. It shows up in the middle of the process, not at the beginning. You have to start with the uninspired clay to have any chance of stumbling upon the inspired vein within it. So, what does this look like in the practical workshop of a life? Let's create a profile of two people facing a common modern dilemma, the desire to change careers. Alex feels stuck in a corporate job that pays well but feels meaningless. Alex dreams of becoming a landscape designer. Alex's pattern is the perfect start illusion. They think, I need to go back to school for a full degree. That's 4 years and $100,000 I don't have. I need to save up, quit my job, and then start. I need to have a full business plan and a portfolio first. The scale of the perfect start is so enormous, so full of prerequisite perfect conditions, money, time, a complete plan, that Alex remains stuck for years, dreaming of the someday when all the pieces magically align. They are waiting for day 365, for the perfect block of marble to be delivered, and in the waiting, their spirit atrophies. Sam is in the identical job with the identical dream. Sam adopts the courage of the next step. They command their state, I can't change everything today, but I can change one thing. Their first step is not a degree or a business plan. It is, this Saturday, I will visit the botanical garden and just look at plants for an hour, for no other reason than I enjoy it. They do it. It feels good. Next step, I will take a free online introductory course in horticulture, 1 module per week. They do it, in the evenings after work. Next step, I will volunteer 1 weekend a month with a local park cleanup crew to get my hands in the dirt. They do it. With each small step, Sam learns, meets people in the field, and their understanding grows organically. They start a small Instagram account documenting what they're learning. After a year, Alex is still waiting for the perfect start, while Sam has a basic certificate, hands-on experience, a nascent network, and a clear, real-world sense of whether this dream is truly for them. Sam has been sculpting their new career from the available clay of weekends, evenings, and curiosity. They didn't need the perfect start. They needed the courage to take the next, tiny, obvious step. The path didn't appear before they walked, it unfolded beneath their feet as they walked. The perfect moment is an illusion. The next step is a reality you can create. Your power does not lie in orchestrating perfect beginnings. Your power lies in your willingness to begin imperfectly. To declare, my state, I command. I am afraid, uncertain, and lacking perfect resources. And I will take this one, small, concrete action anyway. That declaration is the sound of the chisel striking the stone for the first time. It is the moment you stop being an archaeologist of your own potential and become its sculptor. We now turn to a force that can warp the sculptor's hand more than any other, the imagined audience. This is the gallery of ghosts we carry in our minds, the critics, the parents, the peers, the societal, they, the followers on a screen. We often sculpt not with the raw clay of our experience in mind, but with an eye toward how the finished piece will be received, judged, and valued by this phantom gallery. We sand down interesting edges to make it more palatable. We choose safe, popular forms over strange, personal ones. We abandon pieces halfway because we imagine the critic sneers before a single eye has seen it. This is the corruption of the creative process. It is building your life as a performance for an audience whose tastes you can never truly know and whose approval is a fickle, draining currency. The sculptor's liberation comes with a simple, profound reorientation. You must learn to sculpt for an audience of one. Yourself. Not your egoic, approval-seeking self, but your deepest, most honest self, the one that knows truth from artifice, that feels resonance in the chest when something is aligned, that values integrity over applause. When you work for this audience, your criteria changes entirely. The question is no longer, will they like it, or, is this successful by external measures? The question becomes, is this true to the material? Is this honest? Does this form feel complete to me? Have I engaged with this clay with as much skill and authenticity as I currently possess? This is not a call to selfishness or disregard for others. It is a call to sovereignty. Think of the great artists, innovators, and thinkers. They were often not working for the acclaim of their contemporaries. Van Gogh sold almost nothing in his lifetime. Galileo worked against the condemnation of the church. They were listening to an inner compass, working the clay as they saw it, according to their own standards of truth and beauty. The eventual external recognition was irrelevant to the act of creation itself. The work was its own reward because it was an authentic expression of their engagement with reality. Let me share a story about a man named Henry, a high school history teacher in a small Midwestern town. Henry's passion was not just history, but the stories of ordinary people in his own region, the farmers, the factory workers, the immigrants who built the town. He spent 20 years, on weekends and summers, conducting interviews, collecting letters and photographs, piecing together a social history that no official textbook contained. Colleagues thought it was a quaint hobby. Friends wondered when he'd write a real book for a big publisher. The Phantom Gallery whispered, "This is insignificant. No one cares about these people. You're wasting your time." But Henry wasn't working for them. He was working for that audience of one, for his own sense that these stories mattered, that they deserved to be preserved. He self-published a modest, photocopied volume and donated copies to the local library and historical society. There was no fanfare, no bestseller list. But years later, a university historian stumbled upon it and called it a meticulously researched, invaluable primary source that changes our understanding of mid-century migration patterns. More importantly, the grandchildren of the people Henry interviewed finally had a tangible record of their family's life. Henry's sculpture, created for his own eyes, out of love for the clay itself, became a lasting gift. He succeeded because he never aimed for external success. He aimed for fidelity to the material. Contrast this with the modern, personal brand, culture, where life itself becomes a curated performance for the gallery of followers. Every experience is filtered through, how will this look? Every hardship is framed as a lesson before it's fully felt. Every achievement is hollow if it doesn't generate sufficient likes. This is the ultimate perversion of the sculptor's work. You are no longer shaping clay. You are painting plaster to look like marble for a quick glance from a scrolling eye. It creates a profound inner emptiness, because you have abandoned the only audience that can ever offer true satisfaction, your own sincere self. How do you reclaim this? You practice internal validation. You start small. You complete a task, and instead of immediately seeking praise, you sit for a moment and ask yourself, did I do that well, by my own standards? Did I give it my honest effort? You make a difficult choice, and instead of polling your friends, you check in with your gut. Does this feel aligned for me, even if it's unpopular? You create something, a meal, a piece of writing, a garden bed, and you appreciate it for its own qualities, for the process of making it, before you show it to anyone. You are cultivating the inner critic who values craftsmanship over celebrity, integrity over image, truth over trendiness. This has a surprising social benefit. When you sculpt for an audience of one, you paradoxically become more authentic and trustworthy to others. People are drawn to those who are not performing, who are not desperately seeking approval. Your relationships become based on genuine connection, not on mutual performance review. Furthermore, the work you produce from this place, because it is undistorted by the desire to please, often possesses a unique power and originality that does eventually resonate with others. But that resonance becomes a bonus, not the goal. The goal was the integrity of the engagement itself. Consider the Japanese concept of kodawari. It refers to a relentless, often obsessive commitment to quality and craftsmanship in one's work, driven by personal standards that far exceed what the customer might ever notice. A sushi chef with kodawari will spend years mastering the way to sharpen a knife, to select fish, to form rice, not for a Michelin star, but because anything less would violate his own personal art. He works for an audience of one, his own exacting standard. The customer receives the benefit of this profound commitment, but the driver is internal. This is the sculptor's mindset applied to vocation. Your life is your craft. Your kodawari is your commitment to engaging with its clay skillfully and authentically, regardless of who's watching. Now, let's apply this to the most vulnerable sculpture of all, your character. Your reactions, your ethics, your kindnesses, your moments of courage or cowardice. Are you shaping these for the external gallery, to be seen as a good person, to avoid blame, to gain moral superiority? Or are you shaping them for the audience of one, so that you can look in the mirror and know you acted with integrity, even when no one was there to see? This is the bedrock of self-respect. It's choosing honesty when you could lie without consequence. It's offering help when no one will thank you. It's admitting a mistake when you could easily cover it up. You are sculpting your character in the private studio of your conscience. The form you create there is the one you have to live with every moment of every day. So, the next time you feel the weight of the phantom gallery, the fear of judgment, the craving for approval, the anxiety about how your choices look, remember the sculptor in the quiet studio. The only light is the lamp on the work. The only sound is the chip of the chisel. The only opinion that matters is the one that asks, is this true to the stone? Your life is that studio. Turn down the noise of the imagined crowd. Work for the audience of one. Create a life that feels true and complete to the only person who will experience it from the inside, from birth to final breath, you. Our exploration would be incomplete, even dishonest, if we only spoke of sculpting with the clay of opportunity, of gentle challenges, of inspired days. The true test of the sculptor's art is in working with the darkest, heaviest, most resistant clay, the clay of our own shadows. This is the material we often wish to discard. Our grief, our rage, our shame, our envy, our profound inadequacy, our selfishness. We treat these not as clay, but as waste products, evidence of failure to be hidden away. We try to bury this clay, to pretend our workshop only contains light, beautiful marble. But a sculptor who only works with perfect marble is not an artist, they are a decorator. The master works with all that is given, knowing that the dark veins in the stone are not flaws to be concealed, but features that give the sculpture depth, character, and a story of tension and integration. In psychological terms, this is the work of integrating what Carl Jung called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we disown, repress, or project onto others because they are uncomfortable or seem socially unacceptable. Your shadow isn't evil, it's just unintegrated. It's your capacity for anger, for pettiness, for fear, for laziness. When you refuse to acknowledge this as your clay, it doesn't disappear. It operates autonomously, like a hidden chisel making rogue marks on your life, outbursts of disproportionate anger, self-sabotaging behaviors, harsh judgments of others who display the traits you deny in yourself. The sculptor's approach to the shadow is revolutionary. Bring it into the workshop. Acknowledge it as part of your material. Do not try to sculpt it away. Instead, understand its nature and incorporate it into the whole. Your anger is not a demon to be exorcised, it is a form of intense energy, a passionate response to boundary violation. Its raw, unshaped expression is destructive. But shaped with awareness, channeled into clear communication, into protective action, into fuel for righteous change, it becomes a powerful tool in your form. Your fear is not a weakness to be ashamed of. It is a brilliant, ancient signaling system. Unintegrated, it paralyzes. Integrated and listened to, it informs wise caution, prepares the body, and highlights what you truly value enough to be afraid for. Your envy is not a moral failure, it is a compass. It points, often with painful accuracy, to unfulfilled desires and unexpressed potentials within yourself. Instead of hating the feeling, you can ask it, what does this person have that I am telling myself I cannot have or be? Is that true? This is not indulging the shadow. It is not saying, I am angry, therefore I will rage. That is leaving the anger as a chaotic lump of clay in the middle of the floor. It is saying, the anger is here. This is the material of this moment. How can I work with it? Can I feel its heat without being burned by it? Can I let it inform me without letting it dictate to me? You take the dark clay onto your wheel. You feel its gritty, unpleasant texture. And you begin, with patience, to center it, to bring it into relationship with the rest of your being. Let me offer a personal story of shadow work. For many years, I had a deep-seated pattern of people-pleasing and conflict avoidance. I prided myself on being easygoing, spiritual, above anger. My self-image was of light, smooth marble. But the shadow clay was there, a seething reservoir of unexpressed resentment and a fear of rejection so potent it shaped my every interaction. I would say yes when I meant no. I would swallow my opinions. I would feel quietly superior to those who were aggressive. Then, inevitably, the shadow would leak. I'd become passive-aggressive. I'd harbor secret judgments. I'd eventually explode in a disproportionate, tearful outburst over something small, which I'd then feel deeply ashamed of. I was trying to sculpt a statue of pure benevolence while ignoring the pile of dark, sticky resentment clay in the corner. The shift began when a teacher pointed it out not as a failure, but as material. "Your desire for harmony is beautiful clay," he said. "Your fear of conflict is also clay. Your resentment is also clay. You are trying to build with only one of them. No wonder the structure is weak and leaks in strange places. Bring the resentment into the light of your workshop. Look at it. What is it made of? What boundaries have you not sculpted? What yes were actually no's?" It was agonizing at first. To admit I was resentful felt like admitting I was a bad person, a fraud. But as I sat with it, not acting from it, but observing it as material, I saw its components: a childhood pattern, a fear of abandonment, a lack of skill in expressing need. This dark clay, when examined, became my most valuable teacher. It taught me where I needed to build the internal structure of self-worth, independent of others' approval. It taught me the skill of kind but firm boundary setting, which is an act of respect for both parties. It taught me that authenticity, even when it causes temporary friction, creates more genuine and resilient harmony than facade ever could. I didn't eliminate the people-pleasing tendency. I integrated it. I now recognize its early signals as a clue that I'm about to abandon myself. The dark clay didn't vanish. It became the firm foundation upon which a more authentic, less fragile version of kindness could be built. Another story, from a different culture. In the Navajo tradition, there is a concept in weaving called the spirit line, or chuo, a deliberate flaw, a line that runs from the center of a rug out to the edge. It is woven in intentionally. The explanation is that the weaver's spirit, invested in the perfection of the complex pattern, might become trapped in the weaving. The spirit line provides a path for the spirit to escape, to remain free. It also acknowledges that only the divine can create perfection. Human artistry inherently includes the imperfect, the unique, the path of release. The flaw is not a mistake, it is an essential, integrated part of the artwork's wholeness and sacredness. Your shadows, your flaws, your wounds, these are your spirit lines. They are the pathways through which your trapped energy can escape, through which your humanity remains connected to the whole. They are not to be cursed and hidden. They are to be acknowledged as part of the sacred pattern of your being. Working with the dark clay is the advanced practice of the sculptor's life. It requires immense courage and compassion for yourself. The process is simple, though not easy. Step 1. Acknowledge the material. When a shadow emotion arises, shame, envy, resentment, fear, instead of immediately reacting from it or trying to push it down, pause. Take a breath. And simply name it to yourself, gently. Say in your mind, "Ah, I see you. This is shame clay. It has arrived in the workshop." Or, "This is envy clay. It is here." This simple act of naming brings the emotion out of the shadows and onto your workbench. It is no longer an unnamed force controlling you. It is now material to be worked with. Step 2. Observe its properties. Now, without judgment, without calling it good or bad, investigate. Ask yourself, where do I feel this in my body? A tightness in the chest? A clenching in the gut? A heat in the face? Just notice the physical sensation. Then ask, what is the thought attached to this feeling? I am not good enough, or, they have what I deserve. Finally, ask gently, what might have triggered this? A comment, a memory, a comparison? Remember, you are not analyzing to blame yourself or others. You are like a geologist examining a rock. You are simply understanding the material's nature, its weight, its texture, its composition. Step 3. Hold it in awareness. This is the act of centering the clay on the potter's wheel. You are not the lump of dark, difficult emotion. You are the spacious workshop that contains it. In your mind's eye, place the feeling in front of you. Surround it with the open, accepting space of your conscious attention. You are not fighting it. You are not becoming it. You are holding it. This conscious containment, this act of being larger than the emotion, immediately diminishes its autonomous, controlling power. It is now in your workshop, not in your driver's seat. Step 4. Ask the integrative question. Now, engage with the material creatively. Ask it, and yourself, a question of integration. You might ask, how might this difficult material be worked with? What is its potential? Or, what might this feeling be trying to protect in me? An old wound? A fragile hope? Ask, what unmet need does this point to? The sharp sting of envy might point to a neglected dream for creativity or recognition. The heavy weight of shame might point to a personal value you've lost sight of. This question transforms the emotion from a problem to be solved into a messenger to be heard. It seeks the hidden value within the rough ore. Step 5. Make a conscious mark. Finally, choose one tiny, skillful action informed by this entire reflection, not an action driven by the emotion's raw, untamed force. If the integration revealed that shame points to a broken personal value, your conscious mark might be a private acknowledgement, I acted out of alignment. I will recenter. If it revealed that envy points to a neglected dream, your mark might be to thank the envy for its information, and then take one small, concrete step toward your own goal. Opening a blank document, researching a class, practicing for 5 minutes. This step closes the loop. You have taken dark, chaotic clay and used your awareness to shape it into a single, deliberate mark of progress. You have not been controlled by the shadow. You have collaborated with it to create a fragment of your growth. By doing this, you stop being haunted by your shadows and start being informed by them. The darkest clay, when integrated, gives the sculpture its depth, its gravity, its human reality. A life sculpted only from the light is flat, featureless, and ultimately unreal. A life that honestly incorporates its shadows becomes a masterpiece of complexity, resilience, and profound authenticity. Thus far, we've spoken of the sculptor, the clay, the chisel, the workshop. We've spoken of bringing all material into the light to be worked. But there is one final, liberating characteristic of the clay we must confront, a characteristic that can cause immense suffering if resisted, or profound peace if embraced. The clay is always wet. The sculpture is never finished. Our culture sells us a dangerous fantasy. The fantasy of a finished self, a completed life, a state of arrival where all struggles cease and the final, polished form is placed on a pedestal, immune to change. We chase the perfect body, the ultimate enlightenment, the secure retirement, the conflict-free relationship as if they are endpoints. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of the medium. Life is not stone, it is clay. And clay, by its nature, is malleable, responsive, and subject to change from environmental conditions. It can dry and crack. It can be re-wet and reshaped. A finished piece of pottery can still be dropped and shattered. The masterpiece is not in achieving a permanent, static form. The masterpiece is in the quality of your ongoing engagement with the ever-changing material. This is the heart of the Buddhist teaching on impermanence or anicca. It's not a pessimistic statement that everything falls apart. It is a factual observation about the nature of the medium. Everything changes. Your body changes. Your relationships change. Your thoughts and moods change. Your circumstances change. Your very sense of self is a constantly shifting constellation of memories, sensations, and ideas. To suffer because the clay won't hold one shape forever is like a potter weeping because the wet clay is wet. You are fighting the nature of your material. The sculptor who understands this doesn't cling desperately to a single form. They develop a relationship with the process of shaping, not just the outcome. They learn to love the feeling of the clay in their hands, the focus of the moment, the gradual emergence of form, even knowing that form may shift tomorrow. They hold their creations lightly. This is the source of true resilience. When a dried piece cracks, a relationship ends, a career path closes, health declines, they don't see it as the destruction of a finished masterpiece. They see it as the clay returning to a more workable state. It is painful, yes, because you were attached to that form. But the essential material, your capacity to engage, to feel, to learn, to love, is still there. The workshop is still open. You have not been destroyed, you have been returned to the work table. Let me illustrate with a story from the world of architecture, from the ancient city of Venice. Venice is built on wooden pilings driven into clay and silt. It is a city in constant, delicate negotiation with water and decay. There is no finished Venice. There is only the eternal process of maintenance, repair, and adaptation, the restoro. Master artisans there have a saying, "We are not preserving a monument. We are having a conversation with decay." They understand that the enemy is not change itself, but neglect. Their art is in the continuous, skilled response to the inevitable effects of time and tide. They don't weep because the salt water eats the stone, they develop new mortars. They don't despair because the foundations shift, they develop new techniques for reinforcement. Their masterpiece is not the frozen city of 1740, it is the living, breathing, ongoing city that exists today because of centuries of devoted engagement with impermanent material. Your life is Venice. It is not a castle on solid rock meant to last unchanged for millennia. It is a beautiful, floating creation that requires your continuous, loving attention and repair. The goal is not to stop the water. The goal is to learn to build and rebuild in a way that dances with it. This mindset transforms our relationship to aging, to loss, to all forms of decay. We are not perfect statues slowly eroding, which is a tragic narrative. We are ongoing sculptures, where the marks of time, the cracks, the weathering, the patina, become part of the beauty and the story. The Japanese aesthetic of wabi-sabi finds beauty in imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. A cracked bowl repaired with gold lacquer, kintsugi, is more valued than a perfect one because it tells a story of survival and transformation. The wrinkles on a face are not flaws to be airbrushed away, they are the topography of a life lived, the map of laughter and worry, of sun and wind. They are the evidence of engagement with the clay of time. So, how do you practice this in the daily workshop? You practice non-attachment to form. This doesn't mean not caring. It means pouring your full care and skill into shaping the clay today, while holding an open hand about what shape it may take tomorrow. In your work, you pour yourself into a project, but you don't stake your entire identity on its success or its permanence. You know industries change, companies fail, projects pivot. Your identity is not the person who succeeded at X project, but the person who engages skillfully with creative work. In your relationships, you love fully and openly, but you don't cling to the relationship being exactly as it is today. You allow the other person to change, and you allow the relationship itself to evolve. Your commitment is not to a fixed script, but to the ongoing process of loving communication and mutual growth. With your self-image, you stop trying to cement a fixed idea of who you are. I am a successful person, I am a kind person, I am a damaged person. You see yourself as a verb, not a noun. You are parenting, creating, healing, learning. These are processes, not permanent states. This frees you from the prison of a fixed identity when life inevitably challenges it. The unfinished nature of the work is not a flaw, it is your freedom. It means it's never too late to reshape. It means a mistake is not forever. It means an ending is always also a potential beginning. You are never trapped in a final, bad form. The clay is always, to some degree, still workable. Therefore, the question at the end of each day, each year, each era of your life, is not, have I finished? The question is, did I engage? Did I work the clay today with the skill and heart I possessed? Did I learn something that will make me a better sculptor tomorrow? The masterpiece is not a noun on a pedestal. The masterpiece is the quality of the ongoing practice. You are not building a monument to be admired after death. You are living a dynamic, creative conversation with the raw material of existence, moment by moment. And in that continuous, faithful engagement, you find a meaning that can never be shattered, because it was never dependent on any single form holding still. We have traversed the philosophy of the sculptor. We have spoken of clay, chisels, shadows, and impermanent masterpieces. But philosophy untethered from daily action is mere ornament. It is a beautifully sculpted tool left hanging on the wall. The final, essential step is to bring this understanding down from the realm of ideas into the humble, practical reality of your Tuesday morning, your Wednesday commute, your Thursday evening fatigue. This is about establishing the daily ritual of the workshop. It is the simple, repeatable structure that turns insight into embodied wisdom. It is how you remember, amidst the chaos of life, that you are the sculptor and not just the lump of clay being pushed around. Your workshop is not a physical place, though a quiet corner helps. Your workshop is the attentional space you consciously create. Your ritual is the set of actions that carves out that space and dedicates it to conscious shaping. It need not be long, complex, or esoteric. In fact, the simpler, the better. Complexity is the enemy of consistency. The goal is not a dramatic hour of spiritual exercise, it is 5 minutes of real remembrance that changes the quality of the next 24 hours. Let me propose a minimal, potent ritual structure. You can adapt it, but its core components are universal. First, the morning centering, the touch of the clay. Before the day's demands hijack your attention, take 3 minutes. Sit. Feel your body on the chair, your feet on the floor. This is your physical clay, right now. Take 3 slow, conscious breaths. With each inhale, mentally say, my life. With each exhale, I command. You are not commanding the day's events, you are commanding your foundational stance. You are declaring sovereignty over your attention before you give it away to emails, news, or other people's agendas. You are touching the clay, feeling its texture, remembering it is in your hands. This 3-minute centering is the equivalent of the sculptor entering the studio, laying a hand on the stone, and feeling its potential before picking up a single tool. It sets the tone. Second, the midday check-in, the alignment stroke. Sometime in the blur of the afternoon, set a gentle alarm. When it goes off, pause for 60 seconds. Ask the alignment question, in this moment, am I sculpting or am I being sculpted by? Are you consciously shaping your response to a difficult meeting, or are you being shaped by irritation? Are you carving out a moment of kindness, or are you being molded by rush and stress? This is not a judgment. It is a navigational check, like a potter stopping the wheel to see if the clay is centered. If you're off-center, if you feel reactive, passive, or lost, the check-in itself is a corrective. The simple act of asking the question re-engages the sculptor's mind. You take one conscious breath and proceed, recentered. Third, the evening review, the day's form. As the day ends, spend 5 minutes in reflection. Not judgment. Review. Ask 2 questions of your day's work. 1. What clay was I given today? The unexpected event, the difficult emotion, the moment of joy, the boring task. 2. How did I work with it? Did I use a refined chisel or a blunt one? Did I wait for perfect conditions, or did I take a next step? Did I extract any fleck of learning, patience, or clarity? Do not dwell on failures. Simply note them as an unskillful mark made with the chisel of anger, or a period of waiting when engagement was possible. Then, find one skillful mark. One moment, however small, where you commanded your state, where you chose perception, where you extracted value. Acknowledge it. This is how you train the eye of the artist to see progress not in finished forms, but in the quality of individual strokes. This review closes the workshop door for the day with conscious awareness, not just collapse. This ritual is the spine of practice. But around this spine, you build the muscles of engagement through microsculpting exercises. These are tiny, deliberate practices woven into the fabric of ordinary life. The traffic jam sculpture, you are stuck. The clay is frustration and wasted time. Your micro-exercise, command your attention. For the next 3 minutes, listen. Not to the radio, but to the symphony of sounds around you, the idle of engines, distant horns, the patter of rain. Be the sculptor of your auditory experience. Extract the practice of focused listening from the clay of delay. The waiting line sculpture, you are in a slow queue. The clay is impatience. Your micro-exercise, command your posture. Feel your feet rooted. Lengthen your spine subtly. Take 5 breaths that fill your lower ribs. Sculpt a physical presence of patience from the clay of hurry. The difficult interaction preview, you know you have a challenging conversation ahead. Before it begins, take 90 seconds. Ask, what is my intention for this interaction? To understand, to set a boundary, to connect. What chisel will I use? Perception of shared humanity, not perception of threat. This is pre-shaping your stance, preparing your tools. The boring task alchemy, you have a mundane, repetitive chore. The clay is boredom. Your micro-exercise, commit to perfect presence for the next 5 minutes of the task. Feel the water on the dishes. See the pattern in the data entry. Be utterly, completely there. Extract the meditative quality of manual focus from the clay of tedium. These exercises are not about achieving a transcendent state. They are about practicing the fundamental move of the sculptor, the conscious insertion of choice between stimulus and response. You are building neural pathways of agency, one microsculpture at a time. Finally, remember the community of workshops. While you sculpt for an audience of one, you do not sculpt in total isolation. We are all apprentices and masters to each other. Sharing stories of your clay, your clumsy strokes, your occasional moments of skillful work, is not boasting or complaining. It is comparing notes on the material, sharing techniques, offering encouragement. It reminds you that you are not alone in this human project of shaping a life from difficult, beautiful, impermanent stuff. The global community listening here is a silent fellowship of sculptors, each in their own workshop, each learning the same fundamental craft. So, as we near the end of our time together, the invitation is not to understand a concept. The invitation is to begin a practice. Tonight, perform the evening review. Tomorrow morning, do the 3-minute centering. In the afternoon, set the alarm for the alignment check-in. Pick one micro-exercise tomorrow and try it. Do not aim for a perfect ritual or a flawless day. Aim for one moment of remembered sovereignty. One conscious stroke of the chisel. The meaning of your life will not be found in a grand finale. It will be revealed in the accumulation of these daily, humble acts of conscious shaping. It will be the sum total of your engagements. The love carved out of moments of indifference. The patience sculpted from raw frustration. The wisdom extracted from the ore of failure. The courage formed in the kiln of fear. You are the sculptor. You have been the sculptor all along. You were just looking for a finished statue somewhere else, not realizing you were holding the raw material in your own 2 hands, and that the tools were your attention, your response, and your unwavering willingness to engage. The workshop is open. The clay of this very moment is waiting. It is imperfect. It is all you have. It is everything you need. What will you make from it? Our work today must acknowledge one final, grounding truth: the sculpture of a life is not created in a single, frenzied session. It unfolds across seasons. There are seasons of rapid, fertile shaping, springtimes of new beginnings, summers of abundant growth and visible progress. And there are necessary seasons of fallow waiting. Autumns of release, winters of deep, inward consolidation where the surface seems still, even dormant. The impatient sculptor, addicted to visible progress, fears the winter. They mistake stillness for stagnation, consolidation for failure. They try to force growth in frozen ground and break their tools. The wise sculptor understands the rhythm. They learn to put down the chisel when the light fades, to tend the fire in the workshop, to study their plans, to sharpen their tools, to let the clay itself settle and reconstitute. They trust that the invisible work of winter, the root growth beneath the soil of the soul, is as essential as the visible blossom of spring. You will have seasons where you feel you are carving masterpiece after masterpiece, relationships deepening, projects succeeding, insights flowing. Do not become attached to this season. It will change. You will have seasons where the clay seems lifeless, where every stroke feels clumsy, where losses accumulate and the form you were working on cracks. Do not despair in this season. It, too, will change. Your task is not to cling to spring nor to curse the winter. Your task is to learn the unique work of each season, to align your practice with the natural rhythm of your energy and the world's cycles. What does this look like in practice? In a season of spring, summer, energy and expansion, this is a time for bold strokes, for planting seeds, for engaging actively with the world. Your ritual is one of focused execution. Use your morning centering to channel your abundant energy toward priority. Your micro-exercises should be about sustaining momentum and avoiding scattered effort, sculpting focus from the clay of multiple opportunities. This is when you take the next step, and the next, and the next. But even here, wisdom says, do not deplete the soil. Build in moments of restoration. The most productive sculptor knows when to step back, hydrate, and stretch. This season is for building the major forms. In a season of autumn/winter, contraction and consolidation, this is a time for release, for introspection, for healing, for deep learning. Your ritual shifts. The morning centering becomes more about gentle acceptance. My state, I command, becomes a command to be present with stillness, not to fight it. The alignment check-in asks, am I allowing this necessary rest, or am I angrily trying to force spring? The evening review looks for different skillful marks, the patience shown in delay, the self-compassion offered in failure, the quiet insight gained from reading or reflection. Micro-exercises are internal. Practicing letting go of a ruminative thought, sculpting gratitude for a simple warmth, extracting the lesson from a dormant period. This is not a time for grand external shaping. It is a time for sharpening tools, repairing the workshop, studying the grain of your wood, and gathering strength. It is when the deepest, structural integrity of your character is forged in the quiet fire of endurance. A story from the natural world. The giant sequoias of California, the most massive living things on Earth, depend on fire for their reproduction. Their cones are sealed shut with resin and only open to release seeds under the intense heat of a forest fire. The fire season, which seems like pure destruction, is an essential part of their life cycle. It clears the forest floor of competing brush, releases nutrients, and triggers the next generation. Your personal winters, your fires of loss or difficulty, are often the very conditions that force open your most deeply held seeds of potential, clearing the ground for a new kind of growth that couldn't happen in the comfortable shade of the old life. The dormancy or the fire is not an interruption of your sculpture, it is a phase of its ecology. Therefore, the long view question is not, am I being productive today? The long view question is, what season am I in, and what is the skillful work of this season? Pushing for summer growth in a personal winter leads to burnout and brittle results. Resting in a personal summer is a waste of creative fertility. The art is in the discernment of seasons. This requires honest inner listening, not comparing your timeline to someone else's perpetual seeming spring on social media. This long-game perspective also dissolves the anxiety of falling behind. In a culture obsessed with linear, upward trajectories, the sculptor sees a spiral path. There are times you circle back to work on a foundational form, your health, your core relationships, your emotional regulation, that you thought you'd mastered. This isn't regression, it's going deeper. You are not a 2D line graph. You are a multidimensional form being revealed from all angles over time. A winter of depression may feel like going backwards, but if you meet it as clay, it may be carving into you a capacity for empathy, a knowledge of darkness, a resilience that becomes the hidden backbone of your future compassion. That is not falling behind, that is acquiring a depth unavailable on the sunlit plateau. So, grant yourself the grace of seasons. When you are in a fertile time, work with gratitude and vigor, but do not gloat or cling. When you are in a fallow time, rest with dignity and patience, but do not resign or despair. Tend your workshop in the winter. The fire of your practice, your simple, consistent rituals, will keep the inner space warm until the external conditions thaw. And they will thaw. The clay's nature is to change. Your mastery is in changing your relationship to it, season by season, stroke by patient stroke, for the entirety of the long, beautiful, unfinished work that is your life. We have come to the end of our time together, but this is, of course, not an ending. It is a beginning, the beginning of your conscious practice in the workshop of your days. We have journeyed from the myth of the archaeologist to the reality of the sculptor. From the passive wait for meaning to the active creation of it. From the fragile hope of a cosmic insurance policy to the robust declaration of personal command. We have spoken of clay, chisels, shadows, seasons, and the daily rituals that turn philosophy into lived truth. Before we part, let us address one final, quiet question that often arises. What is the point of all this sculpting? When I am gone, what remains? This is the question of legacy, and it too must be liberated from the archaeologist's grasp. The archaeologist wants to leave behind a monument. A finished statue on a public plinth, a name in a history book, a permanent mark that shouts, "I was here." This desire often leads to a frantic, ego-driven shaping of a life aimed at external validation that echoes beyond the grave. The sculptor understands a different kind of legacy. If the sculpture of a life is never finished, then its legacy cannot be a static object. The true legacy of the sculptor is not in the fixed forms they leave behind, but in the quality of engagement they embodied, and the ripple of that engagement through the lives they touched. It is in the skills they shared, the compassion they carved out of difficult moments, the space they held for others to discover their own inner sculptor. Your legacy is not a noun. It is a verb that continues to act in the world through the ongoing practices you inspired in others. Think of a master potter. Their legacy is not solely the beautiful pots on museum shelves. It is in the students they taught, who now teach others, passing on not just techniques but a way of seeing, a reverence for the clay, patience with the process, integrity in the craft. The master's hands are gone, but the posture of mindful creation continues in 1,000 other hands. Your kindness in a moment of someone's despair may become the invisible support that allows them to be kind to someone else years later. Your choice to work skillfully with your own anger may break a cycle of reactivity in your family line. Your willingness to begin imperfectly may give a colleague the courage to try. These are the unseen, interconnected sculptures that form the real heritage of a human life. Your most enduring sculpture is the impact on consciousness itself. Your own and others. Every time you choose the refined chisel of patience over the blunt instrument of irritation, you strengthen the neural pathway for patience in the universe of human experience. Every time you extract wisdom from failure, you add to the collective repository of resilience. You are not just shaping your own clay, you are contributing to the atmosphere of the shared human workshop. This is a humble and magnificent legacy. To have made the mental and emotional environment around you slightly more skillful, more clear, more compassionate through the quality of your own engagement. Therefore, do not sculpt for the biography. Sculpt for the biography's unwritten footnotes, the quiet moments of integrity that no one will ever record. Sculpt for the look of understanding in a friend's eye when they feel truly seen by you. Sculpt for the feeling of rightness in your own chest when you know you acted from your deepest values, not your loudest fears. Sculpt for the peace that comes from no longer wrestling with life, but dancing with it, partnering with the clay, feeling its lead, adding your own pressure and release to co-create a form that is uniquely, authentically yours. And so, as we close, the mandate is simple. It always has been. Look at your hands. They are empty of predetermined meaning. They are full of potential. Feel the material of this moment. Your breath. The sound of this voice. The weight of your body. The thought in your mind. This is your clay. Not tomorrow's. Not yesterday's. This. Choose your chisel. In the next interaction, the next challenge, the next ordinary task, what perception will you bring? One that creates connection or one that builds walls? One that sees raw material or one that sees only obstacle? And begin. Not with a grand plan for a masterpiece. With a single, conscious stroke. The next breath taken with awareness. The next word spoken with kindness. The next small step taken despite fear. Welcome to the Fellowship of Sculptors. The global community here, now, is your silent company. We are all in our own workshops, learning the same craft, struggling with the same resistant material, celebrating the same small victories of skillful engagement. The light is on in your workshop. It has always been on. You just needed to be reminded to look up from the search for buried treasure, and to see the workbench in front of you, and the tools in your own hands. My life, I command. My state, I command. The clay is in my hands. Now, yours are too. Go to work.